Super Lucky Disaster Man. Chapter 72, The Russian and the Divergence. Although he was a fellow disciple of Mori Ogai, Komaeda Nagito himself knows nothing of this. In theory, whatever happened within the port mafia had little to do with him. However, even so, Komaeda Nagito remained as sensitive as ever, sensing that something big might be happening within the port mafia soon. There was no helping it, after all, who could blame him when the person he lived with, Dazai Osamu, was an executive of the port mafia? Just seeing how often Dazai came home to rest was enough for Komaeda to understand, more clearly than some of the cooperating enterprises, just how busy the mafia was. In fact, since Yokohama was too small, Komaeda, during his break, had decided to go out for a walk. Unexpectedly, he happened to run into Dazai, surrounded by subordinates. Even from a distance, Komaeda couldn't clearly see Dazai's expression, but Dazai still immediately noticed his gaze and turned to wave at him. Komaeda did not want to disturb Dazai's work, so he simply waved back with a smile and left. Seeing Dazai like this, Komaeda knew it was either the port mafia that was about to face a major crisis or that Dazai himself had run into big trouble. It was the first time Komaeda Nagito had ever seen Dazai in such a mood. But if it's Dazai-kun, he would be able to break through despair and finding hope, right? Komaeda Nagito wasn't worried at all. With his cane in hand, he entered a coffee shop with a bookstore attached, picked up a newly released book, ordered some coffee, and sat at a table by the window, enjoying his afternoon tea time. Because Komaeda Nagito had fractured his right leg twice in 1 year, a frequency that was quite high, he didn't want to stay in the hospital until it healed completely. Therefore, the doctor had advised that for a while after his discharge, he should continue using a cane, be cautious during rehabilitation, and avoid putting too much stress on his right leg. If anything felt off, he was to use the cane immediately to relieve pressure. Not long after sitting down, someone else sat down opposite Komaeda Nagito. The bookstore had limited seating, and each spot was valuable. There was no way they'd let someone occupy a whole table alone during peak times like lunchtime. So sharing tables with strangers was pretty common. Komaeda Nagito instinctively glanced at the newcomer. It was a foreigner with a sickly look, pale face, obvious dark circles that resembled those of a programmer who had been working overtime for 6 months straight. Strangely enough, in this kind of weather, the man still wore a distinctive wool hat. A country's name immediately sprang to Komaeda Nagito's mind. Russia. Speaking of Russia, last year Komaeda Nagito had taken a few boxes of painkillers because of Dostoevsky, an experience that had left a deep impression. Now, whenever he thought of Russia, he thought of Dostoevsky. However, Komaeda Nagito hesitated slightly. In truth, he was like many others, he found it difficult to differentiate the nationalities of foreigners. To him, they all looked like foreigners, and that kind of hat wasn't necessarily worn only by Russians. Natsume-sensei had never shown him a photo of Dostoevsky, so even if he happened to be lucky enough to run into Dostoevsky today, he wouldn't have a way to confirm it. But there was something about this man's aura. He didn't seem like just any ordinary person. Trusting his own luck, Komaeda Nagito pondered for a few seconds before taking out his phone, planning to take a picture first. If it were anyone else, they probably wouldn't have thought much about this situation. But Komaeda Nagito felt the possibility of running into Dostoevsky was still quite high. Just as Komaeda Nagito took out his phone and was about to open the camera, the foreigner opposite looked up and glanced at him. Komaeda Nagito had to temporarily switch to his mailbox and pretended to be checking his unread emails. After all, since he wasn't sure, what he was doing could essentially be considered sneaky. If the person really were innocent, what would he do then? Komaeda Nagito didn't want to be so obvious about something like this. The foreigner spoke in Japanese. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" The honorific language was quite fluent. Komaeda Nagito had this thought and replied, "No, it's not." "I see." The foreigner said, "I saw you looking at me for a while, so I thought someone else might be sitting here." His voice was soft, without a detectable foreign accent. It sounded as if he had grown up in Japan. Komaeda Nagito replied nonchalantly, "Sorry, I don't often see foreigners. I was just trying to guess your nationality earlier. The man blinked. So, did you guess correctly? Well, based on the hat, I guessed you were Russian. Komaeda Nagito smiled wryly and whispered, but I'm really not good at this. If you weren't wearing that hat, I wouldn't have been able to tell. No. The man replied, you guessed right. From the man before him, Komaeda Nagito sensed something akin to Dazai Osamu's aura. Perhaps it was similar to the times when Dazai Osamu pretended to deceive people, all traces of hostility seemingly vanished. It was a charm that made others unknowingly let down their guard, making them see Dazai Osamu as a close friend, a harmless yet mysteriously compelling atmosphere. But Komaeda Nagito wasn't sure if he had revealed something himself, as the man didn't continue talking to him. Instead, he bowed his head and started reading again, as if Komaeda Nagito's speculations were just baseless conjecture. However, when Komaeda Nagito decided to do something, his skin could be thick enough to surprise people. It's my first time seeing a Russian in real life. Your Japanese is excellent. The Russian spoke softly, thank you. Komaeda Nagito had wanted to ask more when he heard the vibration of a phone. The other man took out his phone, checked it, and gave Komaeda Nagito an apologetic smile. I have something to attend to. Goodbye. He had only just sat down, yet he already had to leave. Although it was a bit of a waste of time, it was actually something that could happen to anyone. Plans to stay at home all day getting interrupted because a relative suddenly wants you to go out for dinner with them. Disrupted plans are pretty common. Suddenly, it seemed like this had just been a completely ordinary encounter, a passerby he'd randomly met and parted ways with. But ever since taking several boxes of painkillers, Komaeda Nagito had been sensitive to Russians. Taking advantage of the moment when the man turned his back, Komaeda Nagito snapped a picture of his silhouette and sent it to Natsume Soseki. Sensei, I met a Russian today, and he gave me the same feeling as Dazai-kun. What's the likelihood of encountering a Russian in Yokohama? Natsume Soseki's replies were always slow, so Komaeda Nagito didn't wait for a response before turning off the screen. According to Natsume Soseki's plan, the person they intended to fish out, Dostoevsky, was not supposed to know about Komaeda Nagito, whom he had hidden so well. After all, even the Japanese government he collaborated with didn't know about him. Naturally, Komaeda Nagito trusted Natsume-sensei to keep a secret, but he trusted his own luck even more. What's the likelihood of running into a Russian in Yokohama? What's the likelihood of meeting a Russian who gave him the same feeling as Dazai Osamu? Maybe he was overthinking it, but based on experience, Komaeda Nagito felt it was necessary to pay attention. It was a pity he couldn't try conversing with him more. Komaeda Nagito expressed deep regret. If the man had indeed been Dostoevsky, he would have liked to ask what the point of causing chaos in Yokohama was, to figure out if he represented hope or despair. Out of Komaeda Nagito's sight, the Russian picked up a call as he walked away. He took out his phone when you left, and based on the direction, he might have taken a picture of you, said the voice on the other end. But even if he did, it was probably just a picture of your silhouette. He then continued reading. I see. He seemed like just an ordinary person. Dostoevsky-sama, no, master, should we get rid of him? Do not act on your own, Ivan, Dostoevsky said. I have other arrangements. Ivan Goncharov spoke gleefully, so he is indeed the person you've been looking for. Congratulations, master. Dostoevsky responded and then hung up. Though he had only exchanged a few words with Komaeda Nagito, Dostoevsky, through careful observation of expressions, had almost certainly confirmed that Yakuran Gesso's intelligence was accurate. That, Crime and Punishment, are you investigating who the author is? Using some unknown means, someone who had never interacted with him had managed to find his phone number and called him. Yes, that's right. Let me introduce myself, I'm Yakuran Gesso. As for how I know, well, figure it out for yourself. I won't go into details. Anyway, I've come to bring you some intelligence. How did you get my contact information? Dostoevsky had asked. Yakuran guessed so hadn't told him. Obtaining over 20 phone numbers from parallel worlds or something, when they weren't close acquaintances, why would he reveal that secret? He still held a grudge against Dostoevsky for being too diligent about changing numbers. It had taken him 7 or 8 tries to get through. He just said, "I have my own source of information. Moreover, I even know your new mobile number, which serves as part of the proof of my intelligence. If you want to know, you can investigate yourself. There aren't that many people who know your number, right?" Dostoevsky heard the sweet voice on the phone and said calmly, "This kind of petty provocation is meaningless." Yakuran Gesso wasn't angry. Fine, let's get straight to the point. "About what I just mentioned, are you interested?" "Yes." Dostoevsky didn't even pretend. He directly asked, "What do I need to exchange for this information? Since the information is vague and isn't much use to me, I'll give it to you for free. Let's consider it as forming a friendship." Yakuran Gesso said, "The key phrase is Japan. I assume you've already investigated to this point. Next, I can give you a name." Dostoevsky understood. "Your intelligence is just a name." "That's right." Yakuran Gesso said with a cheerful smile, "Otherwise, why would I give it to you for free?" "Because I don't have more detailed information." A lying Italian. This was the evaluation that crossed Dostoevsky's mind, though he remained impassive on the outside. "What's the name?" Komaida Nagito. When Yakuran Gesso mentioned this name, he clearly seemed a bit delighted. "I suggest you investigate him thoroughly before getting in contact. Of course, you probably won't find much, but it doesn't hurt to try, right? After all, the information I'm giving you is free." "Got it, thank you for the information." Dostoevsky said his thanks politely, as if he couldn't guess if Yakuran Gesso had some private grudge with Komaida Nagito, treating him as though he were a mere tool. Their exchange was brief, and this was the first time Dostoevsky had received free intelligence from someone who suddenly called without any prior contact. He had long since outgrown believing in free gifts falling from the sky, so he couldn't really see Yakuran Gesso as some altruistic person. Regarding the free information, he held a lot of skepticism. However, just as Yakuran Gesso had said, there was no harm in trying. He had been stuck on the identity of the author behind Crime and Punishment for quite some time now. The traps set in Japan were subtle and ruthless, and curiously, he indeed couldn't obtain much more information from it. It even seemed as if someone had used an ability to obliterate the traces. If Yakuran Gesso wanted to deliberately offer him intelligence, then he would gladly accept it. Even if Yakuran wanted to use him for something. Dostoevsky was confident that he could eat the sugar-coated bullet and throw the shell back. Next, Dostoevsky actually went ahead to investigate Komaida Nagito and was surprised to find that this person was from Yokohama. Because of Yokohama's uniqueness, Dostoevsky's attention to this person increased slightly. When he finished reading all the information, Komaida Nagito's importance had temporarily moved into the top 30. By the way, apart from Komaida Nagito, the other 29 individuals were all ability users. Like Mori Ogai, Dostoevsky didn't really believe that Komaida Nagito had no ability, especially when the witness was Komaida Nagito's friend. From the Dragon's Head conflict, his main focus had been Dazai Osamu. Judging from his own mindset, he felt the situation seemed manipulable. Whether or not Komaida Nagito had an ability, he hadn't found any connection between the person and what he was investigating about, Crime and Punishment. After taking a broad view and assessing which of his teammates might be useful in this matter, Dostoevsky eventually decided to handle it himself, which led to the recent developments. The reaction of seeing a foreigner wasn't quite the same as that of Komaida Nagito's other Japanese counterparts. Moreover, he seemed particularly sensitive to anything Russian, but whether he took photos or not didn't really change Dostoevsky's assessment. However, his appearance didn't quite fit the impression of someone who could write a book like Crime and Punishment. In fact, he didn't even seem to understand Russian all that well. It might be worthwhile to check out the people behind him. Oh, and it was also worth testing his luck. Recently, the tools available in Yokohama for utilization were Mimic. That night, Natsume Soseki finally replied to Komaeda Nagito's message, telling him that upon following the target, the person had disappeared after leaving a certain camera's view. Moreover, throughout the entire time, the person kept their head down as if they knew the positions of all the cameras, never exposing their face. It was definitely suspicious, and Natsume Soseki advised Komaeda Nagito to be careful. Natsume Soseki even carefully confirmed with Komaeda Nagito if he hadn't mentioned anything to anyone that required secrecy. Komaeda Nagito, of course, replied that he hadn't said anything to anyone. Well, that was strange. Both he and Komaeda Nagito had hidden themselves well. If this Russian was truly Dostoevsky, how exactly had he tracked down his disciple? It was just too strange. Even if it wasn't Dostoevsky, this shady Russian was very suspicious. It could very well be someone Dostoevsky knew. Overall, the situation just didn't seem right. Thinking it over, even though both he and Komaeda Nagito were well hidden, there was always the possibility of some ability user having a divination ability. It wasn't entirely impossible for the intelligence to be leaked that way. Still, while this Russian's actions were suspicious, after recalling everything that had been said and done, there wasn't really any malicious intent towards Komaeda Nagito. If he really was targeting Komaeda Nagito specifically, then surely he would have done something more. Natsume Soseki found himself with a headache. Komaeda Nagito reassured him over the phone, "Sensei, there's no need to worry about me. I've experienced so many similar situations growing up, and I'm still fine, aren't I?" Natsume Soseki. You have a point. It's true that even the kidnappers who targeted you all ended up dead, and yet you're still fine. But this feeling of concern is uncontrollable. As for Dostoevsky's story, since it wasn't really necessary, he didn't share much with Komaeda Nagito. In terms of cunning alone, Komaeda Nagito was far from that so-called demon who had survived countless elaborate traps for nearly a year, leaving behind no clues. As for luck, that level of uncertainty could potentially disrupt plans. But last year, Komaeda Nagito had already shown his resolve, wanting to face difficult challenges head-on without retreating, causing Natsume Soseki now to be too embarrassed to tell him to hide away. Disciples are a debt. Natsume Soseki sighed as he hung up the phone, while Komaeda Nagito casually deleted the message log. Just as he was about to set the phone down, the sound of the door opening came from the entrance. It turned out Dazai Osamu, who was not supposed to come back today, had returned. Komaeda Nagito sat on the sofa, still holding the slightly warm phone. "Good evening, Dazai-kun." "Good evening, Komaeda-kun. I need your help." Dazai Osamu didn't even sit down. He walked over and started speaking. "Oda Saku is being followed by an enemy right now. The 5 children he adopted are being threatened because of him. I'm worried the enemy might target them, so could they stay at your place for a while?" Komaeda Nagito immediately understood. No wonder Dazai-kun was in such a foul mood. It turned out that Oda-san was being followed. Of course, Komaeda Nagito agreed without hesitation. "I'd be happy to help Oda-san. Besides, I might be surprisingly good at looking after kids. You know, in another world I took care of some elementary school students." "Good." Dazai Osamu's expression relaxed a bit. Komaeda-kun, with unexpected chaos all around him, somehow made people feel reassured, as if even in an apocalypse, Komaeda-kun would be the last person standing. Komaeda Nagito asked, "Which home should they stay at? This one, or the one in Tokyo?" Dazai Osamu replied decisively, "Tokyo." The next day, Dazai Osamu went to find Oda Sakanosuke to discuss safety measures. "Is it really okay for them to stay with Komaeda-kun?" Oda Sakanosuke looked surprised. "Komaeda-kun doesn't really seem like he's good with kids, plus his luck. He isn't very close to your kids," Dazai Osamu said. "The effect of his luck on them is likely minimal. As for looking after kids, it's only a matter of a few days. Feeding and sleeping shouldn't be a problem." Oda Sakanosuke said slowly, "If it's your suggestion, Dazai, I have no objections." It's just that I thought you'd have the port mafia provide shelter and safety, not someone that far away. Dazai Osamu pressed his fingers to his temples, because I have some concerns regarding the port mafia. To be blunt, he doubted Mori Ogai. Dazai Osamu had previously taken a trip to a parallel world through the 10-year bazooka and gained some not-so-detailed intelligence. Among that information was the reason why Dazai Osamu had to become the leader himself. Considering how hard the other version of himself tried to save Oda Sakanosuke, he suspected that Mori Ogai's role in it was probably less pleasant than it appeared. Especially since he finally managed to successfully negotiate with Vangala, getting the 10-year bazooka they had sent. Unfortunately, he couldn't enter that previous world. Instead, he fell into a river and rolled around for 5 minutes before he was back without even reaching the shore. As for swapping with another version of himself from that world, Dazai Osamu, based on the remaining traces, deduced that the other version of himself must have dozed off while drifting in the river. By the time he woke up, surveyed his surroundings, and looked at the note he had left, it was almost time to return. All the other him had managed to scribble down was, Mori, betrayed, the kids, Oda Saku, Gi, and then he was gone. Although, based on recent occurrences, he roughly understood what the other version of himself was saying, it still didn't change the fact that ever since then, he hadn't been particularly fond of drowning as a method of suicide, because it was too peaceful, too easy to drift off to sleep. Only now did that thought finally become a little clearer to him. In short, for several reasons, Dazai Osamu was currently extremely wary of Mori Ogai, but he wasn't quite sure what Mori Ogai's goal was. Could it really be as simple as trying to get rid of him? That didn't match Mori Ogai's usual behavior, his ambitions should be broader. Dazai Osamu could have simply fled, but as soon as the idea crossed his mind, Ango's disappearance happened, and Oda Saku also got involved, so he had to stay put for the time being. Fortunately, Mori Ogai probably didn't know that Dazai was already suspicious of him, which still gave him plenty of room to maneuver. For example, he had relocated to a safe house out of the port mafia's reach. Even if Mori Ogai was in collaboration with Mimic and found out the kids' whereabouts to sell them to Mimic, it would still take considerable effort. Furthermore, Tokyo was a high-risk territory. If Mimic truly came to Tokyo for a killing spree, the party who helped them enter Japan would definitely be targeted by the government. Even if they weren't caught openly, they'd face a lot of trouble in the shadows. After all, up until now, the Special Division had turned a blind eye to the port mafia. Because things had been too chaotic for the past 2 years, they had to rely on the port mafia to keep Yokohama stable. If they truly found the port mafia displeasing, Mori Ogai would have a hard time. No one knew how much Dazai Osamu overthink over a safe house address. Oda Sakanosuke, however, simply agreed without hesitation and began quietly preparing to secretly relocate the kids to Tokyo. The kids were very understanding, they knew how dangerous things were and that staying would only be a burden. Each of them promised to obediently follow the instructions of their older brother. Thus, 2 days passed peacefully without incident. On the 3rd day, when Dazai Osamu was reporting to Mori Ogai on the recent progress concerning Mimic, his phone began to vibrate. Mori Ogai seemed unconcerned and gestured for Dazai Osamu to answer. Dazai glanced at the caller ID, frowned, and picked up the phone. Hello. The caller was Oda Sakanosuke, which was rare. He usually didn't initiate contact with Dazai Osamu unless they were collaborating. Dazai. Oda Sakanosuke's voice was urgent, a stark contrast to his usual calm tone. The kids called me, and just as they said, the enemy is here, there was a loud explosion, and then the line went dead. I can't get through. Komaida-kun's phone is also unreachable. Dazai Osamu's expression changed, and instinctively he looked at Mori Ogai. Oda Sakanosuke's voice was loud, and Mori Ogai, seated at his desk, heard it as well. But Mori Ogai's face showed genuine surprise and confusion. Wait, what? I haven't even given Mimic that information yet, so how did those people suddenly know where the kids were hiding? Chapter 72 End.